back to the power of the tongue. The passage in James is has a lot to say about the things that we say. But James chapter 3, I'm going to read a whole passage and then maybe just break it down a little bit. But it's talking about, again, the power of the tongue. And it says, behold, we put bits in the mouths of horses that they may obey us, and we turn about their whole body. Behold also the ships, which though they be so great and are driven by fierce winds, yet they are turned about with a very small helm, whithersoever the governor listeth. Even so the tongue is a little member, and boasteth great things. Behold, how great a matter of little fire kindleth. And the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. So is the tongue among our members, that it defileth the whole body, and setteth on fire the course of nature, and it is set on fire of hell. For every kind of beasts and birds and of serpents and of the things of the sea is tamed, and hath been tamed of mankind. But the tongue no man can tame. It is an unruly evil, full of deadly poison. Therewith bless we God, even the Father, and therewith curse we men, which are made after the similitude of God. Out of the same mouth proceedeth blessing and cursing. My brethren, these things not ought to be so. Oofed.
That's a long one.
It's a long one, and there's like 5 different parts in it. But if we just break it down really simply, I love the first 2 examples it gives, and it talks about how we put a bit in a horse's mouth and then we can control a horse.
Right.
We're going horse riding soon, so we're going to know what this is all about. But if you have any basic knowledge of how horse riding or like how taming a horse works, you can control a horse with just a little piece of metal in their mouth, and when you pull on the reins, it decides where the horse will go, right? And then it also gives you the example of a helm of a ship, which is basically the little part at the back of the ship. Back or the front? Back. It'd be at the back. Back of the ship, where you turn it just a little bit and it decides where the whole ship is going. So it just gives you a pretty intense picture that the words that we say and the power that our words have and the tongue has, it can, determine where we're going in life. You could be going on one path and then you're saying things and you're heading down a whole different way. And we need to acknowledge that the words that we say will determine where we end up in life. Yep. If you want to, live a life that is honoring and pleasing to God, then we need to be watching what our mouths say. We need to be making sure that what we're saying is honoring and pleasing to God. It's like at the end of the passage, and it says, in the same mouth we bless God, and in the same mouth we curse men. You can't have both. Like, that just doesn't make any sense, right? And then in the middle, it just gives you a good example of how the tongue holds so much power. Like a little kindle of fire, it can turn into a massive thing. And isn't that so true? Like, I can think of examples in my life where, you say the tiniest thing, and then all of a sudden it's blown up into like this massive thing, and you're like, whoa, what just happened? Yeah. And you're like, oh, well, I probably shouldn't have said that I shouldn't have made that joke, or I shouldn't have said, whispered that thing to my friend that I said, because now all of a sudden I'm in a world of trouble. Yeah. And the Bible's just so clear, and it literally tells us, and we still go on and do it.
Yeah. I think we just have so much pride in our lives that it determines how we talk. A lot of times, we think of ourselves way too highly than we ought to.
100%.
And if we just humble ourselves and remove that pride, I don't think any of us would be gossiping. I think that wouldn't even be a thing that crossed our mind, or something we'd struggle with. Pride brings so much to the surface. It reveals your heart, like you said, and it does determine which way you're going in life. I don't know, you look at some people and it's, if they had, spoken in a different way, where could their life have gone? And I think of Miriam and Aaron in the book of Numbers. There's an example of them just among themselves, in the disguise of, making it sound as if they were concerned for their brother. They were obviously gossiping, and then it says that God heard them. No one else was around them and no one had heard them, but God had heard them. And I think that's pretty scary, and obviously something we know. But if we just recognize that God is literally hearing everything that we say and keeping us accountable for what we say, that really should, just probably shake us and, make us question everything that we're planning on saying. And in that story, God God literally calls out to them and commands them to come to his presence. And he comes down, I think it's as a pillar of cloud or fire, one of those. He appears to them and he basically, you know, tells them off, and, you know, there's punishment and consequences for that. But if we look at their lives and, you know, use that as an example, our words have consequences, like you said.
100%.
And whether or not we see that in the moment, you can look back at sometimes and, you know, see those consequences.